Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Let's talk about United States history. If you did not see my video where I broke down how we are doing U.S. history for the middle school years, please look up right now on the left or right hand side for a card where you will see how we are learning United States history from my son's 6th grade year through his 8th grade year. In 6th grade, it's, pre-colonization to, I hope I can get to 1865, the Civil War. I might not get that far though. 7th grade, we'll pick up where we left off in the 6th grade, and the goal is to go to 1965, civil rights. And then in the 8th grade year, we'll pick up from wherever we left off all the way through current events. Once we do that, so after doing that, my son will get half a credit for high school for United States history. Once my son is in high school, 9th or 10th grade year, we're going to cycle through United States history from pre-colonization all the way through current events. One more time, because in high school he'll have the ability to think more critically, to analyze information, synthesize information. He'll have a little bit more experience, and we'll be able to dive into more sensitive and political topics. So that's our goal. So let me show you what we're using. Again, I have a lot of curriculum and a lot of resources. We are not using this stuff every single day, guys. We do social studies, specifically U.S. history, and I do tie in African American history in the United States within that subject, okay? We do that maybe twice a week for about 45 minutes to an hour, and then he'll have some work to do independently. We also do projects. We're going to incorporate literature. We're going to incorporate games and movies and things of that nature. Look up right now as well for a card where you will see the literature that we're reading for my son's 6th grade year. All the literature that we're reading this year ties to what we're doing in U.S. history, what we're doing in African studies, what we're doing in world history. I don't think in that video though I put any of our books for African history, but you get the gist. The point is to integrate our literature with our subjects. That doesn't mean that my son isn't going to read other books. We have a lot of books in our household, okay? And my son can pick and choose whatever he likes. However, specific books will be tied to what we are learning. Okay? So, let's get started. What I also wanted to let you guys know is when you see me pull out all this curriculum and I'm telling you, we're using all of this stuff, I actually lesson plan. So when I'm lesson planning and I'm building unit studies, or I'm building a lesson for a particular topic as an example, that's when I actually look through the books and I identify the chapters or pages that we're going to use from each of these books. Again, like I said in my world history video, if you didn't see that, look up now. I'll link that video to this one so you can take a look at it. But like I said before, I want my children to have a wide lens when it comes to the framework that they develop in order to think logically, have valid points, and basically have a foundation of truth, okay? I want my children to have a foundation of truth. And when it comes to social studies, y'all, the opinion of the writer, the viewpoint, the lens of the writer, the experience of the writer is clearly delineated within their textbooks, within the resources, and within the curriculum that you use. So if you are not in agreement with that person's particular way of thinking or thought process or their viewpoint when it comes to a group of people, when it comes to a policy, a topic, something controversial, that doesn't mean you can't read it. It's really good to have varying viewpoints, but you have to balance it. So when I looked at a lot of Christian social study curriculum and resources, I quickly realized that those sets of curriculum, how can I say it? They they were more aligned to a specific viewpoint, a specific thought process, a specific way of thinking. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but for our household, we like to think from varying perspectives. We want to know information from varying perspectives so that we can have our own opinion, so we can develop our own thought processes, not based on the rhetoric or talking points of somebody else, but based on common sense, knowledge, based on a gamut of information from a variety of people based on their experiences and their lens of the world and things of that nature. So I really, really hope that makes sense. Okay. So I just wanted to say that so that you can kind of understand why you may not see any Christian-based material when it comes to our social studies. And again, that's because normally they are more aligned to a specific political party, a specific viewpoint, and that's not what I'm interested in. I don't lean to any particular party. I'm not Democrat. I'm not Republican. Technically, honestly, I'm independent. So when it comes to the things that we read and our understanding of the way things are in the world, that's how we like to think. I want to think independently. I want to have our own framework, our own thoughts, our own talking points based on facts, based on truth, based on a gamut of information, pulling from varying sources, regardless of political party, regardless of belief, regardless of rhetoric. All right. So for U.S. history, we are going to use a history of us. We are starting off in the 6th grade with book 1. This is prehistory to 1600. And then we're going to go to book 2, book 3, book 4, book 5, and book 6. That brings us to the Civil War in 1865. Like I said, I don't think I'm going to get there, but the goal is to get there as, close as possible to the end of my son's 6th grade year. All of the links for the purchases that I made today will be in the description box. I did get these either from Amazon or Rainbow Resources or eBay or a homeschool conference a year ago. And guys, I look for deals, okay? I will have an item in my cart. I will keep my items in a cart forever until I find a coupon, a discount, a sale, or something of that nature. So when you see all these resources that I purchased, I rarely buy them at full price, okay? Okay. So that's the goal for 6th grade. In the 7th grade, if we don't get to book 6, Civil War, we'll just pick up wherever we left off in 6th grade and 7th grade. We're going to move on to book 7, book 8, book 9, and then this is book 10. That'll bring us to civil rights. And then in the 8th grade, we will do a review of everything. And then we will use this book here, which is Freedom, A History of Us. These are all from the same author, Joy Hakim. Okay? Now with these series here, I also have a few of them in audio, MP3 through Audible. So these books do come available in audio, again, via Audible. You may have a CD. You may have an MP3. It's totally up to you. I like to have a lot of our history books, science books, world history books, the main curriculum, of course, in audio so that we can use them on the go as we are traveling, okay? So let you see that one more time. A History of Us. This is our main curriculum. I think this can be used for middle school, and it can also be used for high school. When my son gets in high school, we will cycle through all of these books again in order for him to have the other half of his credit for U.S. history. The source book and index, which is book 11, is basically all the documents that shaped the United States. The Magna Carta, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the preamble. Let me see what else is in here. You have the speeches of presidents.
It's too heavy. Mommy made it.
Now, these books, they do have tests and quizzes and activities that you can purchase. We did not do that because in the other piece of curriculum I'm going to show you, that's where I'm going to pull information from in order to build tests and quizzes. But a lot of what we're going to do is going to be project-based, and it's going to be a lot of discussion. We're going to keep a notebook using a timeline approach for history, just like we're doing for world history. We're going to do a timeline approach to United States history, and we're also going to do state studies as we are learning. The reason why I like this for middle school and for high school, because it is so easy to read. It's not convoluted. It's not hard to understand. It is clear and straight to the point. Let me read something for you. I'm going to read out of this book here. I'm going to just turn the page and read something. And let me show you how it's read. So I'm reading chapter 1 from that book, Americans Fighting Americans. It says, "It was the worst war in American history. It was called the Civil War, or the war between states. And sometimes brother fought brother and father fought son. More than 620,000 Americans died. Cities were destroyed, farms burned, homes levied, and on the bloody day, at a place called Antietam, more men were killed than on any other day in all our history." If I'm pronouncing that word incorrectly, please forgive me. Okay, I'll move on. The total deaths were almost as many as in all of our other wars combined. If the same percentage of today's population were killed, it would mean 5 million deaths. I love the way it reads. My 6th grader can read this with no problem, okay? So that's why I say this is perfect for middle school and it's perfect for high school. It's a lot of information, okay? And that's why we are taking 3 years to go through it. I'm not in a rush. If I don't meet my goal at the end of the year, meaning I'm, up to a specific year, event, or book, who cares? We'll pick up the next year. And if I'm not done through, 8th grade, who cares? We'll pick it up in 9th grade. It's not a problem. I want to take an incremental approach and feed the information to my son in pieces and tie it to other parts of the world, tie it to other major events, tie it to projects, tie it to, or marry it in such a way where it is brought to life using things like movies and literature and things of that nature. So let's move on. So this is another book that we are using, United States History. It is by McGraw-Hill. This is a school textbook, public school, private school textbook, and it is used in the 10th grade in high school. I like this book because it marries it to geography, and it splits the timeline in great detail, and it also speaks to the student. I like the way it reads. I'm also going to use this to pull discussion points, to pull questions from. I'm going to build my quizzes and tests from this, along with some other material that I'm going to show you. Let me show you the table of contents. This book goes all the way up to the inauguration of President Obama. So when we get into the 8th, 9th, 10th grade, whenever we get through with U.S. history, we of course will cover current events wherever we are. So the first chapter, it starts off with colonization, okay? So the Joy Hakim book that I showed you starts off with prehistory to the 1800s. This one starts off with Christopher Columbus, and we're going to learn the truth about Christopher Columbus as well. Then we go into the American Revolution, creating the Constitution, Federalists, Republicans, growth and division. This is where the land of cotton starts taking place. This is where American nationalism starts taking place. Then we go into the spirit of reform. Then we go into the manifest destiny. Then we go into slavery and expanding that within the West, Civil War, Reconstruction, settling the West. That's where we talk about, Native Americans, industrialization. Another reason why I like this particular curriculum is because it talks about every single president in detail as they began their presidency, and it also talks about some of the things that they did or what they did not do. Then we go into urban America, where we dive into immigration, and we talk about becoming the world power, the Spanish-American War. Then we go into the progressive movement. That's where Roosevelt began his years. Then we go into World War I, the Jazz Age, Great Depression. Then we go into Roosevelt and the New Deal. Then we go into World War II, the Cold War, post-America, after those wars. Then we go into JFK and the Cold War, civil rights movement, the Vietnam War, the feminist movement. Then we go into the Watergate scandal, Nixon's administration, and then we go into conservatism during the Reagan years. Then we talk about the Clinton years, again, some more information about immigration. And then, like I said, this book ends with the initial inauguration of President Obama. Okay, so let me show you what a chapter can look like. So a chapter has multiple lessons. Okay, let me just show you. So this one here, they give you your vocabulary words here. Let me go a little deeper for you. Let me see if you can see that. Okay. Sorry for the glare. You get your vocabulary words, some academic vocabulary. It goes into note-taking, how to take notes while you're reading this book. This is another reason why I liked this book along with what I use for world history, because it helps you think critically. It helps you organize your thoughts. It helps you find various methods and techniques for taking notes and things of that nature. Okay. Then we have some critical thinking over here. Some more critical thinking here. Then we have geography connection. Every lesson has a geography connection component with it. So like we're doing with geography, we can tie this into it as well as we are learning U.S. history. At the end of every chapter, you will have a review of your vocabulary. It will talk about what you can do with those notes that you created, how to use various techniques to fine-tune those notes. In this example, they're showing you how to categorize the notes that you wrote. Then we have some evaluating, drawing conclusions, and some expository writing. Sometimes they'll have persuasive writing. It just depends on what the topic is. Okay, and then we go into the next lesson. At the end of every lesson, you have an assessment. You can use this as a quiz, as a test, whatever. It divides it by every single lesson. By the end of every chapter. At the end of every chapter, you'll have an assessment where it breaks it down by lesson, and you can use this for your test or for your quizzes. Okay? So let me read what this book sounds like. So it's not written for a middle schooler. It's definitely written for a high schooler. But again, I'm not giving this book to my son and saying, hey, read the book. No. After my son reads a specific chapter in here, either read it or he listens to it or both, we'll discuss it. And then on the next meeting day, we will talk about the same topic from a different lens or perspective using this book here. And then we'll dive into those discussion questions that I showed you earlier. So let me read the paragraph here. It says, when the Civil War began, hundreds of military officers had to choose whether to support the Union or the Confederacy. Eventually, 313 officers, or about 1/3 of the total, resigned to join the Confederacy. I'm reading here the opposing sides. In 1860, the United States had 8 military colleges, and 7 of them were in the South. These colleges provided the Confederacy with a large number of trained officers to lead its armies. The North had a strong naval tradition. More than 3/4 of the United States Navy officers came from the North. Perhaps even more important, most of those Navy warships in all but 2 of the nation's shipyards remained under Union control. So hopefully you can tell the difference between how the Joy Hakim book reads, and you can tell the difference how, a high school book reads. So I know my son will be more interested in the other, but this I would actually read aloud to him, and we, like I said, would discuss. In addition to that, remember when I said how I want to bring in African American history in the United States and also discuss that in a timeline approach as we're discussing what happened in the United States? How are we doing that? We're doing that through this book here. I love this book. I've been using this book since the 5th grade with my son to pull topics from and things of that nature. This is from Asante, Dr. Moliti Kite Asante. Hopefully I am pronouncing his name properly. Let me show you his name right there. You can absolutely use this book by itself and keep it moving. But again, I like to learn from different perspectives. So as we are learning and as we are thinking critically and as we are, using information to build upon each other in order to come up with our own framework and our own thought processes of why things happened the way they did, using factual information, not just opinionated talking points. That's why we use various curriculums, okay? Especially in social studies. So let me show you the table of contents here. The table of contents here starts from Africa. So this has a little bit of African studies as well. Unit 1 talks about a rich legacy. Okay, it goes into ancestral bonds, the Africans. It goes into the Nile civilization, the civilizations of the Niger River. And then it goes into exploitation and the fact that, Africans were scattered to the West, the European slave trade. Okay, and then it goes into Lost in America, resistance to enslavement, Africans and the American wars in Britain. This dives so much deeper than all the other books that I showed you. And this is from a straight African American perspective, okay? So let me tell you how I do it. So let me explain it to you again. My son reads from this using the audio, following along with it. We'll discuss it. He has to discuss it with me. He's basically giving me a brief rundown of what happened, what he read, and then I will tie that information to whatever we read in this book on a different day with those talking points and questions that you saw in here, to include some note taking. So the note taking that you saw in here will include what he learned here, and it'll also include what he learned in the Joy Hakim book. In addition to that, on a different day, we will dive into that same topic, whatever we were discussing from those first two books. Excuse me. We will dive into that topic in this book here. This book also has questions and talking points. So when I'm building my quizzes and tests or whatever, I'm pulling from this book and I'm pulling from this book here. Okay? Reconstruction, turn of the century, standing up for your rights, will never turn back, freedom movement, winning through the law. Okay? And then it also gives you some maps, charts, and tables. Okay, and then at the bottom, the reason why I love this book is because it... You're sleepy? Okay, go to bed, boo-boo. I love you. Good night. No, you go to the other bed, not this one. Love you. Okay, so at the bottom of this book here, it gives you that timeline approach. So this is the timeline that we will be using for U.S. history, okay? This is the timeline from this book that we'll be using as we discuss U.S. history. Like I said, and like you saw in the first few chapters of this book, it talks about Africa, okay? At the end of every chapter, you have comprehension review, you have critical thinking, you have vocabulary, you have how to read a timeline here. And this is what's going to help create that timeline throughout the year. You have a global connection, understanding that whatever you read through multiple perspectives. And then you have writing. Every chapter has the same type of feel. Okay? I'll show you another chapter, the abolitionist movement. And let me read this so you can see how it reads. This is also a high school book. I'm reading from here. The fight to abolish enslavement continues. From the very beginning, many whites had joined Africans in the struggle to end enslavement. As time passed, this struggle would gain in momentum. The United States Congress passed the Anti-Slave Law in 1808. This act made the trade in enslaved Africans illegal. It also fueled the fight to abolish enslavement all over the country. The abolitionist movement grew even faster with the publication of The Liberator in Boston in 1831 by white abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison. Okay, so as you can see, it's not as smooth, in my opinion, doesn't really read to the student as easy as this one, okay? However, it's still clear, it's still understandable. I think a middle school and a high schooler can still take a look at it. The questions on here are a bit harder, okay? In my opinion, I think the questions that they have for this book causes the students to think a little bit more critically, but that's why I'm here. I'm here as the parent to do just that, okay? So these are the three books that we are using as our base for United States history along with geography. Okay, like I said, we'll also do state studies and we will do president studies. So some other stuff that we're going to throw in as we learn U.S. history. This book here, I thought about just giving it to my son and having him read it in 6th grade year. But nope, I decided we're not going to do that. We're going to read this book taking an incremental approach. As we learn topics in history, we will dive into this book here, okay? This book here, Lies My Teacher Told Me, Everything Your American History Textbook Got Wrong. We'll also read this. Again, I don't know when we'll be done reading these, but they will be available to us throughout my son's middle school years, okay? I also have this book here, Do It Yourself Homeschooling, United States, Geography, History, and Social Studies Handbook. It's basically an activity guide. As we learn about states, we'll dive into this book here. Okay, so I'm using this book here for our state study. I also have, some principles and things of that nature that we'll also use. We're using this book here from IEW for some writing assignments. Again, as we learn about various topics, this is the student book. I just showed you the teacher's manual. As we learn about various topics, we'll have some of this come to play. Lesson 1, this one is about Christopher Columbus. And then the next lesson is about the lost colony. Jamestown, Boston Massacre. So as we learn about various events in history, we'll pull in these writing lessons as well. If you did not know, my son did do IEW Level A. We did that when he was enrolled in a public school full time. We did that in the 3rd grade, when the end of 3rd grade, going into the 4th grade that summer. And we also did it in the 4th grade, okay? So he's familiar with keyword outlines and things of that nature. Although we're not using IEW this year or next or, in the future, he still understood those concepts. We are doing a different writing curriculum, and my thought process on writing is a bit different from public school, when he was in public school, to now being able to homeschool my son. Look up right now in the but up on the right or left hand side, you'll see a card. I'll plug in a few videos that talks about what we're doing for ELAR, which is English Language Arts and Reading. That includes our writing. That'll show you what we're doing this year, my son's 6th grade year, 2019-2020 school year. And I'll also put in some videos on my thought process on writing. Some other resources that we are going to use will be this American Stories book, 100 True Tales from American History. But again, as we are learning about American history from various lenses, from those 3 core curriculums that I showed you, right? Those are my spines, my foundation that I'll use to build our lessons and build our unit studies. As we read various other books, we'll be able to decipher if there's any rhetoric in there, if it's actually accurate, and if there are any fallacies in there. So I bring those words, fallacies and rhetoric, because as a part of our middle school years is electives. And some of those electives include informal logic, and it will also include speech and debate, which will be inclusive of rhetoric. That's a separate video. Here's another one, Children's Encyclopedia of American History. Let me put some of these away so that you can get a full view of the book I'm showing you here. Hopefully that's a little better. Okay, so that will give us just some resources to use along with literature. like I said before, as we're learning different topics, I try to find movies, documentaries, and literature that will bring all this information alive. Okay? Government. We're really not hitting on the topic of government in middle school. We're going to hit that topic hard in high school, but that doesn't mean we're not going to incorporate government. We are going to do government, but it will be more of a unit study approach. I'm tying government into our U.S. history, of course, but there is no specific curriculum. It's just resources that we're using for that. And as we go through election years, we'll dive into various topics, watch the debates, talk about logic, rhetoric, fallacies, talk about the branches of government. We'll use our videos like Schoolhouse Rock and Netflix and YouTube in order to, bring all that stuff into play, into light, and into bring those things to life. But that will be more of a unit study approach. So I will do a separate video about some other resources that we're using for our U.S. history and geography and government, but that'll be separate because this video is probably super long already. So guys, I hope this video was a benefit. I hope it was helpful. If you have any questions for me, leave them in the description box below. And as always, guys, please, you be blessed and make it a fantastic day. Bye.